All right, we're going to start our budget workshop. We're a little bit after 5:01, about 14 minutes, so it's 5:14. But appropriate to start this, and I apologize we couldn't start right on time. We had a commission meeting that went over that we actually had to continue one of the items that had several hours of testimony. So since March, we've been holding public work sessions that have taken an in-depth look at our budget for fiscal year 14-15, and this is the 7th or 8th public meeting on our budget. Most of the focus has been on the fact that we have been facing declining revenues since 2009. In 2009, the City of Orlando generated $137 million in property tax revenues, and in the current fiscal year, the city will generate $102 million. So that is easy math. That's $35 million less than we did just 5 years ago, or roughly the size of our city's Family Parks and Recreation Department. We've been facing some difficult decisions about raising our millage rate this year, and it's important to note that we have continued to make reductions in our budget. Since 2002, $379 million have been cut from the city's general fund. In the upcoming fiscal year, we'll cut another $17.5 million from the general fund. The city has maintained the same millage rate since 2009, and in fact is less today than it was in 2001. Revenue produced by property taxes has declined. In 2009, we had a 5.65 millage rate, and as I said, accounted for $137 million. In 2015, without a millage rate change, property taxes would be projected to produce $109, and with the adjusted millage rate that we voted on in the last meeting, it still only produces $128 million in property taxes, so still a full $9 million less than was generated in 2009. So this is the second of two public hearings for the adoption of the millage rate and budget for the City of Orlando for fiscal year 2014-2015. At the first hearing held on September 8th, City Council adopted the proposed millage rate and tentative budget. At this second hearing, City Council will consider for adoption the final millage rate and budget. Madam Clerk, would you read the title of the millage resolution?
Resolution of the City of Orlando, Florida, establishing the ad valorem tax levy millage rate upon the assessed real property and business personal property tax rolls of the year 2014.
The proposed millage rate for the city for fiscal year 14-15 is 6.65 mils, which is 23.2% higher than the rolled back rate of 5.3977. Is there a motion to adopt the millage rate?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Ing, second by Commissioner Sheehan. Rebecca, comments on the millage rate?
Yes, sir. On July 28th, the City Council approved a millage rate of $6.65 per $1,000 of valuation so that the appropriate filing could be made with the property appraiser by the August 1st deadline set for the trim notification process. The millage rate is within the parameters outlined by the state formula and is being increased to produce the revenue necessary to maintain the city's current levels of service.
Okay, I have 5 appearance request cards. Let's say item number 1, which could be the budget or could be the millage rate, but I'm going to just give you an opportunity to go ahead and speak now and count this towards both the millage rate and or the budget. Vic Vermillion. So please state your name and address, and you're limited to 5 minutes.
My name is Vic Vermillion. I live at 3619 Finch Street, Orlando, Florida. Grew up in this city 50 years ago. Came back just a few years ago and retired. Have just recently become involved in local politics, or not local, our local government, I should say. I received my tax notification going up 17.5%, and when I add in the value of the property, it's going up 20.5%. And when I compare that to the other organizations that are on my tax notice, I see they go up maybe 4 or 5%. So I've become concerned. I was down here last week, made a comment that I think it was time that the City of Orlando tighten its belt because I think this increase is excessive. Since then, I've received several PowerPoint presentations from Mr. Stewart and the city clerk, and I thank you for those. I like numbers. And so I went through some of these numbers. I looked at the PowerPoint presentation from April 14th, 2014, the one from April 28th of 2014, and finally the one of July 28th, 2014. And that's where I found some interesting numbers. And I'd like to share some of those with you. This is where we have on page 22, I believe it is. Yes, page 22 on the executive offices, where it shows what the total budget is for the executive office and how many employees you have. Quick numbers, you're paying $101,000 average to the average employee in that section or in that office. $101,000, that's average. That's from the probably the lowest paid trainee to the highest paid, which I presume is you, or to the highest paid, which I presume is you, maybe Dyer. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would make that assumption. Moving on, I go to the business and financial services. $22 million for salaries and benefits divided by just 255 people. That comes to $41 an hour. I'm sure many of those staff members are here. Many of these managers are here right now.
I need you to address council, if you could.
Yes, sir. $41 an hour. Okay, average. That's pretty damn good. Fire department. I go to the fire department. Now I got staff count. I got sworn and unsworn. But I'm going to take the $83 million salaries and benefits and divide that by the whole staff count, just not the sworn. That comes to $140,000 on average. $140,000 on average. That's $67 an hour when you divide by 40 hours times, or 40 hours per week times 52 weeks. $67 an hour. That's pretty excessive, isn't it? I think it is. I go to the Orlando venues. These are the folks who take care of Amway, Geico parking garage, all that sort of stuff. Comes to $50 an hour. Now that's not really a difficult job to run the parking garages or Lou Gardens. Come on. And then finally I come to the police. $58 an hour on average. That's $153,000 or $120,000 when you take everybody, unsworn and sworn police officers, into consideration. $58 an hour. Who's negotiating these? Who is negotiating these contracts? Who's reviewing these salaries? You folks are, right here. This is your job. This is your job. And I think you got to go back to the drawing board and reconsider. I really do. This is ridiculous. So, in conclusion, last week I said you all should tighten the belt. I think you ought to buy a new belt. Okay? Because you're so fat, you need one. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Randy Ross. And then Charles Hickey after that. And then Cynthia Harris.
Hello, everyone. Many of you I've had the pleasure of meeting personally. I arrived here in 1994 and started working almost immediately with the mayor's office on various projects, and I've always enjoyed a great relationship with the city. I feel like I'm out there always cheerleading on your behalf. I was disappointed on Thursday when I learned about the 17.7% increase in property taxes for a couple of reasons. One is I found out about it through the news. I would have liked to have seen some opportunity for some town hall meetings and discussion about that, and that be public so that people would know to come and learn about that. There are things like millage rates and a lot of language that comes out of these processes that I think people just aren't comfortable with because they simply don't understand it. Even when I first calculated mine, I was off on it, and someone had to correct me on it. I'm all in support of the venues. I'm happy that we have a new Dr. Phillips Performing Arts Center coming. I'm happy with the Amway. I'm happy with the soccer stadium. But I'm not happy with how this was communicated to the citizens and how you're handling that particular part. I would have been totally on board and supportive of a 3, 5, or 10% raise possibly. I could go to my boss comfortably and ask for something like that. But to almost come up with a 20% shortfall, to me, it's just not fair and reasonable. And I ask you to reconsider it and see if there's other places that money can come from. I know you've all already unanimously are in support of this. And I would imagine if you're that far behind it, got to do something. Got to make sure we do, because I don't want to give up on the police, and I don't want to give up on the beautiful parks, and certainly don't want to give up on the venues either. So I understand as a taxpayer we too have to give something. I just think that's too much to ask at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Charles Hickey and then Cynthia Harris.
My name is Charles Hickey. I'm at 9781 Portofino Drive over in Orlando. You know, after constituents took their time away last week to speak, took time away from their families and from work to come to last week's meeting and be a part of government and speak and everything like that. And the residents asked for better explanation, proposed alternatives. They were really looking for some kind of discussion on this, but received nothing. No response, no discussion, nothing. The only response that came from Commissioner Stewart, who did a lot of incoherent mumbling, where we later found out he was declaring his own pet project to be approved later on. And he certainly won't be asking any questions tonight or doing anything that would endanger his pet projects. We're not asking for the elected officials to be perfect, just to be leaders, to do their very best every day. And I ask you, is saying nothing an example of doing your best? It comes across like all the commissioners are the lambs following the shepherd mayor around. And whatever he says, you guys are going to go and do. Since you guys won't come up with any proposals or discussions during here, I will. Now, large venues are consuming 1% of the budget. And if I did my calculations correctly, it comes to about $10 million. Now, this is $10 million of our tax dollars that you want by raising our taxes. Why are we paying a higher rate when these venues have their own funding and should not result in our taxes going up? I think this was part of the argument when these venues were all being proposed and we were going to build these, that they really weren't going to be built on the backs of the taxpayers. And if you're going back now and asking for money and raising it, I think that's raising the taxes, and it's going to be built on our backs. By eliminating that line item, it lowers the gaps down to about $8 million. Next, ask Mr. Kroppenbacher and GOA to pay the indirect costs due to the city providing improvements or providing them services. He made a statement last month that no local tax dollars fund operations or capital improvements for the Orlando International Airport. We're entitled to collect these indirect costs as outlined in the budget presentation and per his statement. Let's go ahead and collect those dollars from him. He has the money, he can pay his bills. Finally, make up the remaining gap by raising the business tax, property tax, and all the impact fees so that property owners and new building property owners share the burden to fund the government. Don't just put it right on the property owners. The businesses and the new construction are going to benefit from the services from the city, and they should be paying that up front. Property owners should not be the only ones that have their rates raised. In closing, I'm asking all of you to be leaders by proposing or discussing alternatives to lessen the impact to all the property owners. I've laid out one option, so I'm asking you guys to do some others. With that in mind, I challenge each of you to show us how elected officials are listening to us that comes to these meetings and working with us. Show me you are not lambs blindly following the mayor and being his rubber stamp. I campaign and vote for leaders, not lambs. Which are you?
Cynthia Harris and then Frank Crupero. Scipio. Cynthia Harris.
Cynthia Harris, 12 Shannon Avenue, Orlando. Once again, I'm here to oppose the millage tax. My question to you is, when will the excessive spending stop? We have seen gentrification in the Paramore District, and increasing the millage tax will drive the population down, not build the city up. There's a constant talk about building venues, but there's no discussion on fixing our streets, that flood when it rains, building affordable housing, as well as adequate housing. There's no transparency. The bottom line is that we lose our community. We lose our population by increasing it. No one has considered the retired and people who live on fixed incomes. Their poverty level increases while revenue increases. And that's not fair to fixed income seniors and retirees. As I stated before, put a special assessment on the ticket venue sales. It can be done. Ticketmaster charges us an extra $250, $350 per ticket. You can do that on your ticket sales for your venues and not hurt fixed income and low income residents. The economic times are not keeping up with fixed income and low income residents. We have to tighten up our belts. So should you. I stated before, when you proposed a 21% raise and it went to 6%, only 2 commissioners rescinded on their raises. I'm asking again that all of you rescind on the raise increase and help the citizens out, especially fixed income and low income residents, because they're starving and they're going to continue to starve because the economic times are not going to keep up with them. There were once 20,000 residents in the Paramore district. Now it's 6. That's not fair. And can you honestly sleep at night knowing that you're raising the millage tax and you're decreasing the population? Because some of us, we don't have to worry about the millage tax. We don't live in the district. And one last thing, I know you're working on your website. Can you fix your website so that we can have some transparency and see the financial audits that are supposed to be available to the public? Thank you.
Frank, I'm sorry, I'm butchering your last name, but I can't read it. C. Caprio? Caprio. Okay.
Well, thank you for having this meeting tonight. My name is Frank Caprio, 1505 Arcadia Street, Orlando, Florida. I was raised here in Orlando, went to elementary school, junior high, high school. Love the place, cherish Orlando, one of the best places I've ever lived. I'm definitely against this millage increase. You noted that we had a decrease in income from property taxes over the last 5 years. There's a reason for that. The economy is unstable. A lot of people are out of work. A lot of people are only partially employed. That's why you're going to have less money. And I believe in uncertain economic times, raising taxes is never a good idea. I mean, I personally, with a lot of people who believe that there is a lot of fat that can be cut. But I'll tell you right now, a lot of people who I disagree with on a lot of political issues are coming together on this one. They're not liking this. With the announcement of what's happening with the Major League Soccer, and I'm all for Major League Soccer, but if it's so viable, let them get private funding. I don't want to use our government as a banking institution to bring in a private corporation that's going to be making money off the backs of workers. Raising the millage rate, sure, people are going to be paying more money, for property taxes, but what about the rest of us? People who are renting, they're going to be paying higher rents. People who are going out to restaurants and other businesses, they're going to be paying. Those people don't absorb this. They pass it on to consumers. So property owners here are going to get double hit anytime they go out to any venue in Orlando. It's just a bad idea, and I hope that you can reconsider this. We had some great suggestions, things you can do to trim. Personally, I'm not making as much money as I was 10 years ago. I've had to change my budget. I can't do the things that I did before. I've had to change, and I believe government has to change. And unfortunately, that's one characteristic, and this isn't in Orlando. This is a characteristic across the nation that governments don't want to cut back, and they just need to. So, in closing, I would just say I'm hoping that you can change your mind on this. I don't think it's going to happen personally, but just to let you know that a lot of people are paying attention to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Luana Gelzer.
I didn't ask you to move it this time. I worked around it, Mayor. Luana Gelzer, 7674 St. Stevenson Court. For over 3 years, personally, I've had major concerns about the finance of the City of Orlando. I will state this. I know you're going to pass the millage rate, but what was just said earlier was my concerns doing business as we used to. We must change the way we do business. You must change. On many occasions, I've taken upon myself to come and voice my opinion. On October 7th, I came and I talked about the purchase pricing of the soccer stadium. A blank check was issued back in February 25th, 2013. And it was out of the city internal loan fund. You spent $12 million on land. You sold in June the OPD headquarters to the Orlando Magic for $13 million. We now know that our new OPD headquarters will cost us $43 million. Where would this $30 million come from? I believe off the backs of the taxpayers. In September of last year, you issued another study of the Paramore community. We have been studied left and right. $500,000. And one of the proposals was that we wanted a soccer stadium in Paramore. I spoke on that issue. I had a problem with that. July 2013, last year, the Knapford Charter School, a school that has received failing grades 2 years in a row. It's going to be getting closed down. You gave them $150,000 for portables. Now, let's talk about the soccer stadium and my major concern. Public venue soccer stadium, naming rights. I was here before you February 24th, and I said I didn't think we should. A public venue, the money and the additional advertising revenue should go to the team owners. I spoke against that. That's $20 million for a public venue that's going to a private entity. Something's wrong with that. Like I stated earlier, you bought $12 million worth of property, a blank check. But what people don't understand, you spent 4 to 5 times the value of that property in Paramore. Well, you're just wasting a lot of my money. Now, you proposed because you knew you were going to lose the lawsuit on eminent domain with the church. They didn't give in to you. They didn't give in to your political bullying. Now, moving that soccer stadium, just moving it over, is going to cost us upwards to $15 million. Was a hasty move. You didn't get back to the community. There's other costs, legal costs, to fight the church, environmental issues. Total cost so far, no stadium, $47 million. You must change the way you're doing business. Last week I was here, and I said to the city council, because now I'm looking at each and every one of you, he's one vote. You're 6. Stop issuing Buddy Dyer a blank check. Stop issuing him a blank check. And now it's not just for the Orlando venues. It's and for Buddy's project. Now it's off the backs of the taxpayers. Got a problem with that. Because now, I looked at it. My family has been blessed. We own 3 properties. And it's going to cost us upwards to $1,000. This increase. That's not right to me. Because I've been saying maybe we can look and do something differently. I spoke before, I couldn't serve on no boards. Can't give you input. You just seem like you want to do it your way or no way at all. That's wrong. Now you're messing with my pocket. You done went too far. Went too far. So, Mayor Dyer, I've said this over and over again. I was at the budget hearing last year. I told you then you need a forensic audit. I told the employees that should be concerned about getting that 2% when you tried to get the 21%. I spoke on October 7th about the internal loan fund. You borrowed money on loan money. You're not supposed to do that. That's bad. I spoke about what? I believe you have shifted funding, change the line items, whatever you want to call it, to avoid a public vote on the venues. Because, see, you have to have a public vote by the public if you use Avalon taxes. But if you're using Avalon taxes, our property taxes, now to sustain the budget or make up the deficit because you need to pay your employees, you can get away with that. So I've talked about the naming rights. I talked about how you gave some individuals.
20 seconds.
I didn't hear you, sir.
20 seconds.
20 seconds. $1, the BBIF deal, the new headquarters, the Sunshine Government financial loan, the internal loan. Mayor Dyer, please put the city back in the black and out of the red and stop your corporate welfare.
Time. Thank you for your testimony. It's always enlightening.
God bless you.
Okay, discussion among commissioners. Commissioner Stewart, and then Commissioner Gray, then Commissioner Hill.
Thank you. Mayor, let me kind of cover a couple of quick things. I'm a little disappointed that the last time that the newspaper reported on us that they said that we were all silent on these issues, and it disappoints me.
Well, Commissioner, we have had, this I think is our eighth public
yes,
hearing
thank you.
on
Yeah,
this.
we've actually all spoken pretty candidly for about 12 or 13 hours on this issue. Would we all agree here? And are you tired of us having, Rebecca, I guess you're not never tired of us. That's how wonderful you are. All right, let me cover a couple of quick things that come just to the millage rate. I want to make sure we're on the same task and things I've found out in terms of doing the work that I've done, that I've just tried to make sure we're on the same task. If we had gone, I just went back and checked the last several years, and Rebecca, correct me, I think if I'm wrong, between you and Ray, y'all are much smarter than me. But if we had just gone to the budget rollback rate from 2007 to 2015, it seems to me that if we had just done nothing but gone to the rollback rate, we would have made we'd have $12 million more money. That's all I did basically. It was just take the math, take what the rollback rate that we said that we weren't going to go to, and ends up having $12 million more money in our pocket today if we had done that.
Yes.
Kind of a quick little math, okay?
And you should probably clarify that because of the reductions, the rollback rate
often was higher than what it was before.
Than the current.
That was my point.
Right.
My next point was that
it's really a roll-up rate.
Exactly, because of much what we've done. If we had just kept our rates consistent to what we had spent the previous year, which is effectively the general calculation for the rollback rate, we would have $12,000 more in the bank. Now, that's not the case for the consistency in the economy from 2000 to 2007, because things just went haywire. But that's one issue that we have in front of us. The second issue is that, and I've tried to do the calculation, so correct me if I'm wrong again, the Save Our Homes and 3% more in terms of valuation of our houses is a 3% maximum. And if the cost of living is less, the cost of living. So we talk about the fact that I was at a meeting and one of our constituents said, if you can't live on 3% more per year, then you shouldn't live on it. And I went back and thought to myself, I'm crazy, but let me go back. I don't think it's been a 3%. So I went back and just checked my records, and last year was 1.5, the previous year was 1.7, the previous year was 3.1, but that was an adjustment because I ended up doing something to my house that made that change to it. So we're at 1.5% of the millage rate, just to make sure that I'm kind of asking the same question. We're at 1.5% of the previous year. And I don't know what it is for next year because I didn't have my trim notice with me. So I'm really comparing 13 to 14 and not 14 to the proposed 15. So that's the next question. So that brings me to the next thing I looked at. And these are all things and figures we had last meeting that we chose not to discuss because we'd have a chance to do it later on. So I went back and said, well, what would happen if, forget all the rest of the stuff, what would happen if we just took our millage rate and added just the cost of living to the millage rate and just added that every year? In fact, that's effectively what 6 municipalities did in the Central Florida area that are very popular. So they figured it out a long time ago. If we just kind of make it like 3% per year, we're going to get what we want anyway. I say that kind of a little tongue-in-cheek. I don't want Mayor Bradley calling me up. But I thought, well, what would happen if we had just said the cost of living and we just kind of had kept that? And what I've come to find out is that we would have had in this past year roughly $18 million more that would have come in. That would make next year no reason to have a tax increase. So then I went back and looked again and thought, kind of discussing it out loud with my wife, who is much smarter than me and much more intuitive than me. Then what did we do? And what we did was we decided from this dais to arbitrarily keep those numbers low for as long as we possibly could. There are those who've come to this chamber and said, this is a surprise. I cannot imagine you guys are doing this. And I remember us having this discussion 2 years ago, that here's the trend, and guys, get ready because next year we're going to have a little bit less than this year, and we need to do something 2 years from now, not today, but 2 years from now to make sure that, is that a pretty good recollection of my memory?
Yes, sir. We said specifically in both years of what the trend was and what we could see going, and that we knew that the direction of our commissioners was to postpone any kind of revenue enhancement as long as we possibly could. Yeah. And so that's what we've done.
So we could have come back and just done a cost of living, pumped it up 1.6 to 1.9 to 3.6 on one occasion to 5.8 on another occasion, and we'd have $18 million more in the bank. Mm-hmm. And then we go to the last point, which I want to make sure that other people will hear me, and that is this. The only revenue stream that we really get a chance to control outside what the state allows us to do in changing fee structure, which is 2.5% per year, no more than 5% every 2 years, so whatever that formula is. But the only structure we have is effectively what we charge an ad valorem tax. We don't have ability, we talked about this last time, we don't have the ability to come back and add a half-cent sales tax for our jurisdiction. We don't have the ability to do anything more than just be able to adjust the one thing that we can actually adjust, which is our ad valorem tax. Mm-hmm. And yet the ad valorem tax represents less than 1/7 of the entire revenue that we generate. It represents less than 1/3 of the general. So if there's a 3% increase that we have to create just in general revenue, that we have to create this incredible idea that we have to, it's 3 times magnified, if you want to call it that, on the ad valorem tax. If we got to raise $10 million because we can go, we have to actually raise $30 million to make that happen, just on the general revenue, not including all the other fees related. So I guess what I'm trying to want people to hear, at least through ours, is that none of us on this dais want to do this. We all want the economy to have jumped back and have us be at certain levels, but there are there are artificial things put in place by the voters. Patty has been much more articulate than I have, Commissioner Sheehan. But they've been put in place, and this is the repercussions of those. And that's a real concern of mine, because what our constituents like is they like a certain level of service. Mayor, you said it articulately last meeting, is that, hey, we don't have to do this, we just cut out Parks and Rec. That is one solution to it. There's other solutions of percentage-wise all the way across the board. And so let me conclude with this. If I understand what we talked about originally, there was roughly a $30 million, I'm going by my brain, I can pull it out later on, but there was a significant larger hit that we were getting ready to take. And in doing that, we made some additional cuts that brought us to a point that we could be, that the last ditch effort was to make this adjustment and change. Is that a pretty good
Yes,
figure?
actually we started with a $45 million problem. We worked that down by some transference of responsibility outside the general fund. We have a equivalent to the budget, or to the millage increase, we have a budget cut. So we cut the budget as much as we were raising revenues. And we had some ways in which we found other ways to finance some of our critical expenditures, such as street repair and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I mean, what people are saying to us is that you're not tightening your belt, and the answer is we did tighten our belt. Half of the revenue generation or half of the difference that we're having is roughly cost cutting, and the other half is revenue generation. That's oversimplification, but it's pretty close to being that number. And I look at this and think to myself, that's 12 hours of discussion that we had over the course of the past 8 or 9 months. We started this process thanks to you, Mayor. We started it 2 or 3 months earlier. We began to look at all these figures the moment we got something at the end of last year, and began to look at where we could go. And I'm not trying to throw other cities under the bus. That look, they all have to justify their own budget. But many cities kind of caught on to this idea that we're going to move ours up kind of a little bit at a time, and it'll be better medicine to take. We said artificially, no, we're not doing that. We're the flagship of the community, and what we're going to do is we're going to keep ourselves kind of in check for as long as we possibly can. There are others that have said that we're losing money and getting ready to go bankrupt. I have the honor of sitting on the Finance Committee with the mayor to represent this commission on there. And what I've said often, so correct me if I'm wrong, is that we are choosing not to dip into our 25% reserve because of the negative impact that may have in terms of the financing and other issues we have in terms of our rate. We've said that's, I mean, I know it's, the money goes in and out, but that really basically is the core. So when you say you don't balance a budget, we don't balance a budget by not dip. We could dip into our reserves and balance the budget. And then we spend $2 to $3 to $4 million more per year on interest rates because there's not a level of confidence in the city to do that. I can't tell you how much, I mean, you guys have done a great job. I hope I haven't embarrassed myself, but you've done a great job helping to educate me on how cities operate in terms of finance. And you guys have done a wonderful job trying to articulate this. And when I get calls from our constituents, the deal I make with them is you go to the city, you look at all these figures, and then you ask specific questions, and I will get you every possible answer I can. And with the exception of Mr. Vermillion, if he's still here. He is the only person, frankly, and I've said that too, who's actually got questions. And you haven't asked me yet, but I will talk to you later on after this is over, Vic. Because I think that's the part of being in a city. That's the engagement of what we ought to do. So now I'll get off my soapbox and get back to the core here. We have kept the millage rate artificially low, and so in order not to dip into reserves, we've cut expenses, and in order not to dip in reserves, we're going to have to raise the millage rate somehow. We have to raise revenue somehow. Unless somebody's has just won the lottery and wants to give us $18 million, We're going to have to figure out how to do that. And none of us here want to put that on the backs of our property owners. But that's just how our system works today. And most of us hate it, but that's what we have. So anyway, thank you for your work. I'm sorry for kind of getting on my little soapbox, but I want people to understand that we do understand, at least I understand, much of the intricacies of what's going on and how to, and I don't know what our solutions are, but I want to make sure that we're open and transparent with all of our solutions. Okay, I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're going to do Commissioner Gray, then Commissioner Ortiz, and Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do appreciate everybody that's taken the time to show up. I know some folks are a little frustrated that at least me, I'll speak for myself, haven't responded. But my mode of operation is to listen through the public hearings, and then, of course, last Monday night and this Monday night. And after I hear from you, then I think it's fair for you to expect me to weigh in and tell you where I stand. So I'm prepared to do that tonight. And some of you have heard this before, but I think it's important. I come at this from a different perspective. Not only am I a homeowner in Orlando, but the company I'm associated with is the 8th largest taxpayer in the city. So I've got skin in the game. I'm a stockholder. And so I look at it both from the residential, personal standpoint, but also the commercial standpoint. And one of the reasons I got involved in this is because it's important to me and my company that Orlando continues to grow. When you look at any budget, we all know it's two parts. It's revenues and expenses. The mayor and Commissioner Stewart have kind of talked about some of those challenges. Perhaps in hindsight, we should have done this incrementally over the last 6 years. We chose not to. We can be second guessed for that, but it is what it is. So yes, I'll acknowledge 17.5% to 22%, whichever number you're comfortable reciting. Sounds a bit onerous. But I think if you look at the fact that the commission made the cognitive decision not to raise taxes during, the recession, that was the decision. So we are where we are. And then you jump on the expense side of things. Two parts. We have to control our operating costs. And I'm comfortable that we have done a decent job of that. Can we do better? Absolutely. Mr. Vermillion pointed out maybe in our police and fire areas and some others we can do better. We'll try. I'll commit to doing that. Some of that is contractual through our unions, but we've got to do better, and I'll commit to doing that. But the big piece I want to get to, which is a component of our expenses, is our growth issues. Some of those are associated with the venues. Some of those are associated with my district, which is Lake Nona, which is growing rapidly. And I make no excuses. I told everybody when I got in this because I think growth is good for the city of Orlando. And my challenge personally was to try to mesh somehow the growth of our city with responsible development. And that's a hard thing to do, but I'm one man trying to do that. And why do I think that's important? It's important because I've lived here for 26 years, raised 2 children, educated the children, and as I've said before, just when I wanted them to hang around, they come back with a college degree and say, Dad, I can't get a great job in this town. I've got to go to Atlanta. I've got one son in Boca Raton and one in San Antonio. So to me, I think we have to continue to grow and as a city facilitate that growth. I didn't say fund it totally, but we have to facilitate that growth so that we can continue to offer good jobs. Because to me, show me all the economics you want to show me. If people feel like they have a good job, everything else seems to fall in place. And so I'm committed to job growth. To do that, and again, in my company, we have properties all throughout the Southeast, Charlotte, Atlanta, Jacksonville, Tampa. The areas of cities that grow good have lifestyles to offer. It's easy to say, please don't put this on the backs of the residential taxpayers. That's legitimate. But folks, we've got to attract corporate users. And how do you attract corporate users? Incentives is a part of it. Ask our friends at the Economic Development Commission. Every company that looks here has their hand out. They want incentives. We have to play in that environment as best we can with the resources we have. And the second part is quality of life. The Performing Arts Center, the venues, professional sports, they're open to criticism, and I'll talk to anybody on a detailed basis about my views. But as a general statement, the one thing Orlando has lacked, it's a beautiful place, beautiful weather, It's a safe environment, relatively speaking, but we didn't offer the quality of life that big corporations who are willing to relocate here and spend their money and employ the right people, we couldn't offer that. To do that, there's a cost associated with that. And so that's why I am, and I'm kind of like Commissioner Stewart, rambling a bit, and I apologize, I'll shut off, but to me, we've got to continue to grow, and you've got to spend money to grow. And unfortunately, in growth, as we know, you spend a lot of money up front, and if you do your job, you're going to get it returned over time. And that's what we try to do with your input, is make sure we're making the right investments today at a cost that should pay all of us dividends over time. And part of this budget includes that and facilitating that, and I make no apologies for that, but I will promise we will try consistently to do better on both operating expenses as well as funding that growth. So with that, I'm done, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. Commissioner Ortiz?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess Commissioner Stewart and Commissioner Gray have said plenty of what I was going to say, but what really aches me is when people look at us thinking that we're making a ton of money here and we're making decisions for a city that is suffering, and that's not the case. We have families. I have to stretch that dollar every single day. I don't make enough money. I left a job that was paying a lot more to come here because I thought I could make a difference. I think I'm making a difference. I go out there looking for the reasons why our communities are suffering. So it's not easy for us to have to raise $1 for every $1,000. No, it's not. But there's other factors that contribute to this position where we're at, and everybody is aiming at us because we are the front line. We are the grunts. We're the ones who have to deal on a daily basis with our constituents, and we love it. But at the same time, people have to understand that some of the decisions are being made at the federal level. For example, the moratorium on internet taxes. You know how much money we would be making? Or the caps on tax revenue at the state level. You know how much more money we could be making? But I don't see anybody going over there and complaining about that. I see people coming over here and asking us to make better with what we have. And we do it every day. And people sometimes blame us for things that you guys don't even inform yourself well. The venues. Venues are not coming. The money to build those venues were not coming from the general fund. There's a CRA, for those of you who have heard that word millions of times, CRA and TDT, Tourist Development Tax. That's why I started this class on government, so we can start teaching our communities more and more so you understand how the money is allocated in the city of Orlando. This is not an easy decision. I'm going to be paying that extra $1,000,000 on my taxes, and it's hard to afford that. Now I got a daughter going to college. I got a house. I don't live in a mansion. I don't live in a mansion. So when you guys point that finger at us, please be careful, because those guys over here, we're trying to make the best we can. And we suffer as much as you suffer. We have to deal with the same issues you have to deal on an everyday basis. And we have to make smart decisions here. And we depend on smart staff. And I know I've been criticized. One time I made a comment, silly comment maybe, if you step in the middle, we roll. That was not meant for the community in terms of us making decisions and that we don't care about the community. We do care about the community. Every decision we make, we consider the community. We have heard tons of people here giving their testimony today about a decision being made for a development in Winter Park. In College Park. And we do think about the things people are thinking about on every day and how that affects them. But please also look at the other side of the coin here. Look at how we have to go through. Why don't you meet with us? Why don't you ask us how we come up with the decisions we have to make? Instead of just coming over here sometimes and just laying it out on us as if we were doing this, just to enjoy seeing people suffering. We're not. We're not, because we have to deal with this on an everyday basis. And we're part of that team, of your team. We were elected because we represent you. And if we have to make a decision of this caliber, it's because we have wasted, we have expended all the resources. Averages, when you average, you have to consider each and every position. And you have to consider the amount of time people have been working on a specific department. the newer, the person who's been there longer, you can average every department. You can come up and throw a number out there for other people to listen and think that all those people are making out with all kinds of monies. That's not the case. It's people's making little money and people making greater money because they've been there longer. Okay? It's not as easy as it sounds. And all I ask is for a little bit of patience. We are all in the same boat. We are all working through the same goal, making our city the best place there is to live. We offer a service. I'm pretty sure you don't want that service to stop. Your garbage should stop being picked up the way it is, or the streets to be cleaned the way they're being cleaned, or all the other things that we're providing. Trying to provide jobs. You don't want us to stop doing that. You want us to continue prospering, continue trying to get everybody involved, as we have been trying to do. Don't always look at the negativity. Please join us and look at the positive, how we can make this city a much better place to live. It's very easy to sit down on the other side and just criticize. Why don't you join us? Be part of the team. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, sir. This is difficult times with difficult decisions. I am so caught up by it. But when I think about public safety, we're not cutting our police department staff, our fire department staff. So our neighborhoods will continue to be safe. You know, especially in my district, especially there in District 5, where there in the Paramore area, we have station number 2, which is one of the busiest stations in the nation. I mean, they're not just putting out house fires. Most times they're playing the doctor or the ER by their paramedics. 911 is utilized in District 5 more so than anywhere in this city because of most of my constituents don't have insurance. So it's easier for them to have a ambulance to come out than get to the hospital because of transportation issues. Many of them work here at the city. There is no layoffs. There is no job losses. Our social programs, our parks and recs plays such a monumental position in District 5 and throughout the city, especially in the inner city and low-income families. They get these kids off the street, expose them to new adventures. Our seniors have places to go in the mornings and afternoons. So most here are homeowners. I am a renter of District 5. And the person that I rent from, she's also a senior on a fixed income. So this is, you know, something that I'm dealing with. I applaud my colleagues on the difficult decision that they have to make today. But because of certain factors, as I just stated, I'm going to abstain from this vote.
Hey, I'm sorry, you're going to abstain from the vote?
Yes, sir, because of the, is that legal?
Commissioner, Florida law requires
Okay.
you to vote unless you have an acceptable conflict under law and state the grounds
No.
for that conflict. I certainly understand and sympathize with your comments, but I'm duty-bound to let you know that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sheehan?
Thank you, Mayor, and I too was kind of taken aback by the idea of silence because I've been talking about this for 2 years now, and I guess nobody's been listening to me, but I've been talking about the property tax reform and the structural imbalance that happened because of it, and we did not apply the rollback or roll-up rates as we could have. That was a statutory loophole that we could have done, and we decided not to because the economy was difficult. And there's a commercial cap of 10% that's instituted by people voting for it, as well as the residential 3% cap on Save Our Homes. And the difficulty with that is that commercial uses more services. Now they've got a cap on their commercial properties as well. At the same time, we have valuations decrease up to 30% at times during the whole process. So basically, you have property taxes or property values decreasing, and we had these caps coming out at the same time. And I like to say property tax reform, like suicide, was a permanent solution to a temporary problem. It was it was a dumb idea. And what happened was now we don't have the ability to recover without making these kinds of very difficult decisions. The market corrected itself, and now we can't recover to the levels we were without these increases because of these caps. I've been saying this for 2 years. Nobody's listened to me, except for Commissioner Stewart. Thank you. So, again, that's the frustration, is that with these, again, when you vote on these kinds of reforms without thinking about the valuations going down and the market conditions that we have to deal with, these are the kinds of things that happened. Now, another financial crisis happened as well. We reduced this millage rate on September 9th, 2001. I was the only one who was here, okay? That was 2 days before September 11th. And what happened was we reduced the millage rate. I was even concerned about reducing the millage rate at that point in time. Are we sure we're going to have enough money? And sure enough, that's what started this financial crisis. So tax cuts are not always a good idea because it helped create this whole situation, okay? So we've got a millage rate that was lower than it probably should have been, declining revenues coming in. We had several economic crises during that time, and they created a perfect storm of decreasing revenues. Now, I've been consistent in communicating these concerns at every community meeting that I go to, and I go to all my neighborhood associations, and I've been consistently communicating this as well. And I've asked people to bring their tax bills in, and we've talked about it, and they don't realize their city taxes is different than their county taxes and all that kind of thing. We had to do some education there as well. But, I do feel that we've done everything we can to try to keep things as low as we could for as long as we could. And now people are going to say, why didn't you raise it incrementally over this time? Well, then they would have freaked out about that because the economy would have. There's never a good time to raise taxes. But I have to tell you, we have to pay our bills. And there's been some concerns about police and fire pensions and compensations and everything like that. But the thing of that, those compensation levels are also set at the state level. So we've got people at the state level legislature telling us to pay these pensions and pay these things, yet they're going to cut, but then they cut our revenues at the same time. I mean, I said that I ran for local government. I used to work for the state. And I ran for local office because I wanted the state to get out of my budget because I got tired of them cutting me every year. And I finally just said, if you want me to continue doing this job and you want us to continue doing this job in this office in Orlando, you're going to have to quit cutting us because I'm tired of having to justify my, and I finally said, I've had enough of state government. I'm going to run for the city council. I ran, I won, and now I still got to deal with this foolishness and cut my revenue. Very frustrating to me. But again, we are in a difficult situation. I ask the citizens to understand that this has not happened without a great deal of concern, a great deal of cuts that have happened over the years. $24 million, that's a lot of cutting. And say people say, why don't you just tighten your belts? Well, you know what? On a household budget, you can decide not to take a vacation. But if gas prices go up, we still have to run the police cars. We still have to run the garbage trucks. We don't get to say, oh, gee, we're not going to pick up trash today. That's the difference between government and taking a vacation. You're acting like we take vacations all the time. I give vacations for public service, too. Again, that's not the kind of thing that we can do. People don't realize when they pull out of their driveway, we have to pay the power bill on those traffic lights. All the things that we have to take care of. And I think we do a good job of that. But again, I can't say that forever. You're never going to have an increase. And the fact that, if people look at the past 10 years of what their other services that they get, their cable bill, their other bills that they pay, my cell phone has tripled in cost. And people don't even think about what they pay for those other bills, but they want to hold us accountable for and have absolutely no increases over time, and it just doesn't work that way. It's like we have to continue to provide the same level of service even though our costs are rising. It's a socialist, budget at a capitalistic environment that we have to go buy things and when things are always going up. So again, we've done what we can. It's not easy. I'm never quiet. But again, I've been consistent in saying this over the last 2 years, that this is a structural imbalance and how it happened. And just because people are just now beginning to realize this is happening because we're having to do an increase, that's unfortunate, but that's where we're at, and that's how we got to where we're at. And, you know, I reluctantly support it, and nobody likes to raise taxes. It's never fun. But we've gotten to a point where there's just no other alternatives. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Actually, it'd be nice if we could run the city with no tax dollars at all, but it just doesn't work that way. Yeah. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? So the motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, would you read the title of the budget resolution?
A resolution of the City of Orlando, Florida, adopting the annual budget of the City of Orlando, Florida for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2014 and ending September 30, 2015.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ings, second by Commissioner Sheehan. Rebecca.
Mayor and Commissioners, the total proposed budget for the city as a whole, including all enterprise funds, is $1.04 billion, including a general fund budget of $372.1 million. Those amounts agree with the totals presented at the September 8th budget hearing. There have been no changes made since that date.
Madam Clerk, are there any additional appearance requests?
No, Mayor.
Discussion among commissioners. Commissioner Stewart.
I will be a little clearer this time so that everybody understands it, and I know that those who did not understand it can read actually this statement in the minutes from last meeting. So let me read this clearly. As you know, I have served for many years as the Executive Director of the Christian Services Center for Central Florida. The budget this year and for many years prior to my service on City Council has included funds that provide a modest grant to the center. The amount of that proposed funding for this year is $22,240. None of that money, I apologize, I'll add that emphatic, none of that money goes to the general operation of the Christian Service Center. And I'll add also, and doesn't come to me. These funds, however, will not be granted to the Christian Service Center unless and until the Christian Service Center and the city enter into a separate written agreement. Such agreement will come before the City Council for individual approval, and at some point in the future, I want to make it clear that when this item comes before this council, I'll abstain from voting on that funding agreement between the city and the Christian Service Center, and will fill out the proper required documentation noting this information. I'm a little concerned, I will tell you candidly. This has been raised for the first time in 8 years, so let me share with you exactly what this money does. It pays for a part-time case manager who spends time talking to people about how we can fund their rent, mortgage, utility, transportation, medical, health care, food, and clothing who come to our doorsteps, and they are city residents. That is appropriate use of city money, and none of that money comes to me, and none of that money pays my salary. So I take it a little bit more offensive because candidly speaking, I've been very open and transparent with this for 8 years, and I was open and transparent with it for the 10 years prior to me becoming a commissioner. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and submit this to the clerk for posting on our minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. We have a budget. All right, this is the second of two public hearings for the adoption of the millage rate and budget for the Downtown Development Board for fiscal year 2014-2015. At the first hearing held on September 8th, City Council adopted the proposed millage rate and tentative budget. At this second hearing, City Council will consider for adoption the final millage rate and budget. Madam Clerk, would you read the title of the millage resolution related to the Downtown Development Board?
A resolution of the City of Orlando, Florida, establishing for the Downtown Development Board the ad valorem tax levy millage rate upon the assessed real property within the Downtown Development District for the year 2014.
The proposed millage rate for the DDB for fiscal year 2014-2015 is 1 mil, which is 0.67% lower than the rollback rate of 1.0067. So a motion to adopt the millage rate for the DDB.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Stewart. I'll take that as a second.
Okay.
I'll get you next time, Commissioner
All right.
Ortiz. Rebecca.
Mayor and Commissioners, the City Council, on behalf of the DDB, has set a millage rate of $1 per $1,000 of ad valorem valuation. Similar to the city's millage rate, that rate was submitted to the property appraiser by the August 1st deadline for the trim notification process. The millage rate is within the parameters outlined by the state formula and has not been changed from the prior fiscal year.
Is there any request for public comment, Madam Clerk, on this
No,
item?
Mayor.
Discussion among commissioners? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, would you read the title of the budget resolution for the DDB?
A resolution of the City of Orlando, Florida, adopting the annual budget of the Downtown Development Board for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2014, and ending September 30, 2015.
Is there a motion to adopt the
So
budget?
moved.
Second.
Motion,
You beat me to it again.
Sorry.
motion by Commissioner
I will defer to
Sheehan.
my colleague, and I will withdraw my motion
All
so he
right,
can make the motion.
motion by Commissioner Stewart.
And I will second his motion.
Second by Commissioner Sheehan. Rebecca.
Mayor, the total budget for the Downtown Development Board is $3,539,860. That amount agrees with the total presented at the September 8th budget hearing. There have been no budget changes since that date.
Madam Clerk, request for public comment?
No, Mayor.
Discussion among commissioners? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and so we have a DDB budget as well. Let's move on to the Neighborhood Improvement District. This is the second of two public hearings for the adoption of the millage rate and budget for the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District for fiscal year 2014-2015. First hearing held on September 8th, City Council adopted the proposed millage rate and tentative budget. At this second hearing, City Council will consider for adoption the final millage rate and budget. Madam Clerk, would you read the title of the millage resolution for the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Orlando, Florida, and the Board of Directors of the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District levying an ad valorem tax at the rate of $1 per 1,000 of assessed value on non-exempt real property located within the jurisdictional boundaries of the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District, providing certain findings, providing for administrative millage adjustment in accordance with Florida statutes, providing for the collection of taxes, providing for severability, correction of scrivener's errors, repeal of conflicting resolutions, and an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
Hold on. The proposed millage rate for the downtown NID for fiscal year 2014-15 is 1 mil, which is 100% higher than the rollback rate of 0.00 because this is the first year it has ever been imposed. Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Stewart. Rebecca.
Mayor and Commissioners, the City Council, on behalf of the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District, has set a millage rate of $1 per $1,000 valuation. Similar to the city's millage rate, that rate was submitted to the property appraiser by the August 1st deadline for the trim notification process. The millage rate is within the parameters outlined by the state formula, and as a new district has been created, an increase to provide for administration of infrastructure projects within the district will be the purpose.
Madam Clerk, is there a request for public comment?
No, Mayor.
Discussion among commissioners. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, the title of the budget resolution for the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District, please.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Orlando, Florida, and the Board of Directors of the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District adopting the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget for the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District, providing certain findings, providing certain budget accounting procedures, providing for severability, correction of scrivener's errors, repeal of conflicting resolutions, and an effective date.
So moved. Oh, this is yours.
Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Stewart. Rebecca.
Mayor and Commissioners, the total budget for the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District is $375,038. That amount agrees with the total presented at the September 8th budget hearing. There have been no budget changes made since that date.
Madam Clerk, public comment?
No, Mayor.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, so the motion carries. All right, then, if there's no objection, we will recess the City Council meeting and we will convene the Board of Directors for the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District. This is the second of two public hearings for the adoption of the millage rate and budget for the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District for fiscal year 2014-2015. 2015. At the first hearing held on September 8th, the Board of Directors adopted the proposed millage rate and tentative budget. At this second hearing, the Board of Directors will consider for adoption the final millage rate and budget. Madam Clerk, would you read the title of the millage resolution?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Orlando, Florida, and the Board of Directors of the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District levying an ad valorem tax at the rate of $1 per 1,000 of assessed value on non-exempt real property located within the jurisdictional boundaries of the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District, providing certain findings, providing for administrative millage adjustment in accordance with Florida statutes, providing for the collection of taxes, providing for severability, correction of scrivener's errors, repeal of conflicting resolutions, and an effective date.
So moved.
Second.
The proposed millage rate for the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District for fiscal year 2014-2015 is 1 mil, which is 100% higher than the rollback rate of 0.00. Motion by Commissioner Sheehan, second by Commissioner Stewart. Rebecca, you adopt the same comments you had at the City Council meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that okay, Mayanne?
Yes.
Any public comment?
No cards.
Okay, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Madam Clerk, would you read the title of the budget resolution?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Orlando, Florida, and the Board of Directors of the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District adopting the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget for the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District, providing certain findings, providing certain budget accounting procedures, providing for severability, correction of scrivener's errors, repeal of conflicting resolutions, and an effective date.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Sheehan.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Stewart. On both the millage rate and the budget, would you publish the comments of the Chief Financial Officer from the City Council meeting in the minutes of the Neighborhood Improvement District as
Yes,
well,
sir.
please? You probably could have done your thing quicker than I did that. Is there any public comment?
No, Mayor.
All right, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And so the motion carries. We'll adjourn the Board of Directors of the Downtown South Neighborhood Improvement District. We will reconvene the City Council meeting specifically for the purpose of congratulating and thanking the financial staff, budget staff, for all of their hard work over the course of not just the last couple of weeks, but the last 12 months, because they'll start tomorrow on next year's budget and actually have already been considering how we go about that in light of everything that we have done this year. Rebecca, would you recognize members of your staff, please?
I'd be happy to, Mayor. I'd like for all of the budget staff that is attending to please stand. Ray, please stand.
Ray.
I would just like to say that these are some of the smartest, most hardworking people that I've worked with in the 36 years that I've been working in government. And I just want to let you know that notwithstanding all the comments that might be flying around out there, that I am so incredibly proud of them. And I think that the city is incredibly fortunate to have such talented young people working for it. So I just wanted to have the opportunity to say that, Mayor.
So I want to say personally, again, on behalf of the council, thank you for all those long evenings, not just the ones that have been in public. We've had more budget hearings this year than we've had in the whole time that I have been here in a single year. We started early because we wanted to make sure that our city was on a financially stable footing going forward, and I'm certainly appreciative of all the hours and work and then innovative thought process that has gone on to craft this budget. And council, I also want to thank you, because we have spent a lot of time on budget issues this year. Usually it's kind of perfunctory and we do a little bit and tinker with the budget and keep the same millage rate and use whatever revenues we had. But there's been some discussion about the fact that we didn't raise taxes during the recession. I happen to be proud of that, that we didn't raise taxes while somebody that writes for the Orlando Sentinel wrote an article on the other cities that did raise taxes over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, and we made the collective decision that we didn't want to raise taxes when our citizens were hurting the most. And that may have been the right decision, the wrong decision, but it was the decision and reason we made that decision was not to hurt them further while they were hurting. So I'm proud of those decisions that we've made. But we also have to keep our city running, and we can't do that without generating some tax revenue. And we're down about $30 million in 2009. So there's not one of us that would rather have actually lowered taxes by $1 million if we could do that, but that's just not the reality of the economic situation for the city. So I'm proud of staff, and I'm proud of each one of you. Thank you so much, and we're adjourned.